Well, you perform as much as you possibly can. That's the only way to get better as a performer. To also be as prepared as you possibly can, and that just involves practicing, so that when you're actually doing the performance, your fingers just go and you don't have to think about technique anymore.
Can you give us an example of some techniques you use to correct issues and challenges?
Well, oftentimes something will come up and it's a technical issue more than anything, and you can just isolate that, turn it into a kind of an exercise and just sort of analyze it. And sometimes it's bad fingering, sometimes it's just you've learned it not in the right way. You need to kind of break it down again, start over, and get the hands doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it's just a matter of analyzing and then redoing what your fingers are doing.
John, how do you select this beautiful repertoire?
I select it based on basically what I enjoy listening to. Not just because, like we just discussed, that my voice tends to lean towards the more romantic, tragic kind of music, but and that's what my heart resonates to, and that's what gets my blood really rushing, and what gets me excited to work on new repertoire, and learn new kinds of music, and experience all this vast, endless amounts of music that's just available out there.
Give us an example of how your personal interpretation comes out of the music beyond what the composer asked for.
Well, I think that's often what happens in music, is that our personal interpretations do come into the music. And as we were talking before, especially when you're playing orchestral reductions, which is what this program consists of for the pianist, there's things in the piano reduction that have been changed a little bit from what the actual orchestra is doing. So there's a little more freedom sometimes to embellish, to add a little bit more, to bring out certain lines that are more prominent than others. So yes, I think there's a lot of that, here again, give and take, that you and the composer work it out, right? And when the composer's not here anymore, it's just really up to me and using my best judgment and what I think is stylistically correct.
Jetée.
John, how do you improve your skills as a performer?
There are multiple ways. The rudimentary parts would be voice lessons with my voice teacher that's working on the technique of how to sing properly, the foundation of how to produce this insane thing called the operatic voice. And then working with a vocal coach in languages and the styles of that era the composer created this work. And also it comes with collaborating with other artists and being on stage. There's a lot to learn outside of the technical and the nitty-gritty indoors at the desk versus being on stage and actually being on your feet doing these things and experiencing other artists create with their own unique creativity as well. And it's just being able to be in that kind of rehearsal space and that kind of collaborative space is just, it's an amazing experience just to see what people bring to the table.
Susan, how do you make a meaningful connection with John, who in this case is the soloist you're collaborating with?
Yes. Well, and considering we've not had a lot of rehearsal, just one time through and then do the recording, it involves getting to know what he's wanting. I mean, these are pieces he's worked on for a really long time. He's got them in his being. He knows how he wants them, especially when he's been working probably with another accompanist a lot more than he's ever obviously playing with, doing things with me. So I have to kind of immediately try to assess what he wants from me in terms of slowing down and speeding up and dynamics and all those things. And we have conversations about that, of course, just to make sure that we're in each other's groove. But it's a fun experience. When you play for a singer, one singer will do it different than another singer, and that's part of the joy of live music. It isn't always the same.
Marechiare
Can you give us an example of where your personal interpretation comes out in this music? Where do we experience John as opposed to, where does John come through where Wagner leaves off and Lehar and some of these other Verdi wonderful composers you presented today?
Well, I think the imagination actually takes its place a lot more so than personal experiences. Personal experiences do fuel the imagination to give you some kind of idea of how your character would feel at the time. For example, the first song you'll hear in the program, or you heard in the program, is about a man who loves a woman who's going off with another man to their hometown in England. I don't know what that's like, but I do know what it's like to have to let go of someone that I love in terms of pure sacrifice for the better of that person. So again, I think it's a lot of an imagination that comes into play that is fueled by personal experiences. The Tote Stadt, that was the final piece in the program. It's a man who was just trapped in his own house because he couldn't move forward from his past tragedies, from losing the person that he loves dearly. And it held him so tightly he can't leave his house. And when he finds another woman that resembles his ex-wife, it shakes the very core of his being. But at the end of the opera, he's able to find the courage to actually move forward with his life. And there's so many situations in our lives that we encounter where we do need to muster that courage, regardless of what the situation is, to move forward. So yeah, personal experiences that fuel your imagination.
Great, thank you.